So before I actually get into the topic, I said that this video would be about, we need to talk actually a little bit more about how non-duality does not entail being reabsorbed into essentially nothingness, since like an undifferentiated oneness, right, which you see in a lot of dharmic schools of thought. Not a lot of schools, but you see it in throughout the dharmic communities. In Far Eastern religion, it's very prominent, and you won't really find that in Western thinking. So it's the same concept, right? So like, whereas in Plato, it's different. So whereas in Plato, there are these eternal forms that you have to get back to, in the Far East, what you're getting back to, the quote unquote transcendent realm, let's say, back to the eternal, your primordial state, what you're getting back to is essentially a state of non-individuality, which in my mind is a state of nothingness. So you basically have to be eliminated in order to know God, or to fully experience Him. Okay, and so we have to reject both of those ideas. They're really not different ideas. They're the same concept. It's just a different way of conceiving of it. Instead of saying so, but either way, there's this frozen eternal state that we have to return to or get back to. It's either Plato's forms, or in the Far East, it's this essentially a state of nothingness. They call it the non-dual, they call it God, but it's really just nothingness. And because they don't believe in a differentiated unity, they believe, or a differentiated oneness, they believe in a oneness without distinction that we're getting back to. So the one that I'm aware of, there may be others, but the only non-dual school of thought that I'm aware of that teaches what I'm saying about how non-duality does not involve giving up your individuality, or your individual existence, is Sufism. I don't know if it's Sufism as a whole. I think it is. But at the very least, it's certain schools of non-duality within Sufism. But I'm pretty sure it's Sufism across the board. Sufism is an exception to all other, to exoteric Islam. In that exoteric Islam basically believes in a duality of God and creation, just as Christianity does, like a kind of creation out of nothing. But the Sufis don't believe that. They believe that creation creation is God. It's an expression of God. So there's no distinction between creation and God in Sufism. And the argument that one of their great thinkers, great philosophers, I believe he was from the 11th or 12th century, Ibn Arabi taught that, quite ingeniously, it's a great argument. If you believe that you have to strip yourself or rid yourself of your individual existence in order to truly know your God, or to fully know Him, or fully experience Him, you are suggesting that God had a partner, was partnered with some separate being, i.e. yourself, prior to your ridding yourself of your individual existence. But if all there is God, then you don't need to rid yourself. In other words, if non-duality is true, then if non-duality is true, your individuality must be sacrosanct and preserved eternally. So in other words, to avoid the idea that God has equal partners, which would make him finite, that he kind of shares a space with other beings apart from himself. To avoid that, you must acknowledge your individuality as part of an intrinsic part of God's non-dual expression, and therefore maintain your individuality as part of your understanding of what God is, as part of your understanding of who God is, what God is, and what this reality is. And in order to be true to the dictates of a non-dual outlook. Okay, so that's it for this video, and I will then start work on the topic I promised that this video would be about in the last video. Thank you.